how much you. I remember when you talked about that when we worked over the summer. I remember that.
Yeah.
You
So,
talked about that.
I mean, how did you come up with that tribute?
You know, it was interesting. I've always been a fan of Billie Holiday because my mother was a big fan of it. And she would always play like Name That Jazz Singer in the car. And so it was always, Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
So I was always very enamored by her. And so that was the first thing. And then I didn't realize who Billy Strayhorn was, but I was in love with his music.
Yeah.
So once I began to discover who he really was, I was like, oh my goodness, this guy's amazing.
And he's not a household name for some people.
Right,
I mean, what songs were the ones that really touched you?
Well, definitely Lush Life. Definitely A Flower is a Lovesome Thing, which I love that tune. Take the A Train. I mean, where would you be without Take the A Train? You know? And a lot of people accredit that song to Duke Ellington, but really it was Billy Strayhorn who wrote Take the A Train among so many different other tunes as well. He inspired me so much that I actually wrote a play about him, which I know I'll tell you about later. But yeah, I wrote a play. And then Bill Whithers, Bill Whithers. I started to explore his music later on. So maybe a couple of years ago, I really started to explore who he was and what he was about. And I just noticed that they had the same beginning names. So I said, Billy. Okay, let's see if we can do something with this. So that's what I did.
And was this your first time bringing together some sort of a compilation of artists like that?
Yes, it was my very first time. Yeah, so I'm excited. And they have a lot of things that sort of correlate.
Yeah, what? I was thinking about, what the trend was, or, what you might have been able to find in terms of similarities.
Do you know the biggest thing I believe is actually the fact that they are outsiders, I feel like. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people don't know this, but Billy Strayhorn wrote Lush Life at the age of 15. I think it was 15 or 16, somewhere near that age. And he had never experienced, the words are, I used to visit all the very gay places, the come what may places, where one relaxes on the axis of the thrill of life to get on the wheel of life to get the thrill of life. It's talking about this, this person that, that has experienced life, and he's 15 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what life has he experienced? So I think that he looked at life as from an outsider. Maybe he hoped to live a life like that. And so I think that has a sort of outsider, sort of approach to that. And I'm always attracted to an outsider. I always felt like that myself. And you can take Billie Holiday as well, who wrote, or she didn't write, but she sang Strange Fruit.
Sure.
And that song, it's about lynching. And who was talking about that back then? You know what I mean?
I know. India redid that a couple of years.
I freaking love that.
Yeah. Do you like that rendition?
Yes, I love that. I just love India Reid.
Yeah.
But she wrote, or she sang that song.
Yeah.
And that, people weren't talking about that then, And I think that sort of ostracized her.
Sure.
That separated her in a sort of way. So there's an outsider, sort of energy that sometimes she brings that I'm just very attracted to. And then you have Bill Whithers, who...
It's much more contemporary than anything,
yes,
right? Yeah.
Yes. But he wrote songs, he wrote a song about his grandmother, And I was, researching about his life, and, he was a stutterer. And
really?
He still stutters as well. And so I think people that stutter sometimes are considered outsiders as well, And so I wanted to kind of think about that. And so I think that maybe that informed what music he wrote, because you're sort of looking at the world from an outsider's point of view.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of the connecting thread of those three,
And how do you? So you said something about being an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
And you being an artist, and you said you kind of feel a little bit like that.
Oh my goodness!
How do you come to terms, or how do you find your voice when you are feeling that way?
Well, I think a lot of it is introspection. I think as an outsider, you spend a lot of time by yourself. And so that gives you a lot of time to think and to sort of create on your own. And so left to your own devices, you sort of come up with certain things. Because you're by yourself, you know what I mean, and that's kind of all you have. So you kind of create your own thing that works for you, And so I think that listening to heroes like Billy Strayhorn, like Billie Holiday, like Bill Whithers has encouraged me to find my own voice in that way. Definitely.
Wow. And so were you able to do any of this when you were in Peoria? Were you getting your start? I mean, do those folks in Peoria know, or did they know that this is where you'd be today?
This is where I always.
You're here and you're putting on a show, and
which
it's
is really
bringing.
exciting.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
What I will say is that I believe that there were people that really kind of held me up when I didn't really kind of believe in myself, and a lot of those people were in Peoria. I can name them: Denise Adams, my choir director; Larry Harms, who was my saxophone teacher when I went to community college first. Obviously Reggie Ray. There are so many different people and Catherine Bentley. There's so many different people that sort of held me up and kind of believed in me. And that has given me a sense of confidence.
And you've identified jazz as a genre that you're most attracted to.
My goodness,
I'm sure
yes.
you scatter all across genres when you have to, but how did that happen? I mean, you said your mom would be, playing the music in the car and so forth, but listening to music and deciding to actually sing that are two different things.
I have to say my parents. My parents have always been extremely supportive of me. And when I decided to start to sing, the first thing that I did was sing jazz, because that's kind of all I knew. My mother loved jazz, my father loves jazz, and they listen to it all the time. And so that's what naturally, sort of came out when I started to explore what I wanted to sing, And it was interesting because I come from an instrumentalist background. I played the saxophone. I don't play it that well anymore, but I played it. And so, the saxophone is very much a jazz sort of instrument, or stereotypical.
It's very intricate too, so.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
I love
details.
I love listening to the saxophone, and that, that just has such a strong jazz influence. So I always kind of listened to jazz, and so it just made sense to just following those footsteps.
And when you created the program, how did you determine what that format was going to look like? I mean, what was that like? I mean, you're not just singing their music, but you're telling a story, if you will. How did you do that?
Let me tell you, it actually kind of revealed itself because of the lyrics, of the song. Like, take, for example, Bill Whithers, who wrote, who is he and what is he? Oh, who is he and what is he to you? That song is so sort of accusatory, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so a song like that sort of puts you in a space, you know what I mean? And the beginning of it was like doom ding doom doom. So it gives you this sort of like energy, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I think I need to put this right here, because it sort of begins to tell a story, and then I can go to different places from there, because it's such a strong pull.
Yeah. And when you just said that, when you just did what you just did, it reminded me of Al Jarreau.
Oh, don't get me starting getting emotional on this show, because they'll be like, oh my goodness, what is wrong with him?
It did. You just reminded me of Al Jarreau.
He was such, and he still is. He was such, and may he rest in peace. But he was such a big influence, on me, or he, has had such a big influence on me. I'm such a big fan of his, and it was very sad, because it was on a Sunday, I think it was, when I found out that he had passed, and it's just sad.
Yeah.
And it's, what was that, 3 weeks, 2 weeks ago?
It's very recent.
It's very recent, So.
Well, a lot of people are bringing tribute to him. I don't see how you can be a jazz singer and not appreciate his talent and his craft and his contribution to the music industry. I think a lot of babies were born on Al Jarreau music.
Right. Mom, I hope we're not going to have that conversation right here. But I was kidding about you.
Very romantic guy.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And he did so many different things. You want to talk about crossing genres too?
Right.
He crossed jazz. He did the R&B. He did so many different things.
Right. Right. And so Billie Holiday, her life, of course, was just cut too short. You know, she had her own personal demons, if you will, that she was, battling in her life. And of course, that's not unlike many other artists,
Right.
How are you going to weave any of that into the story? Not that we haven't seen Lady Sings the Blues already,
Right,
but, you know.
right. And 9,000 times.
Yes.
You go, you know,
Uh-huh.
what's the famous line in here? What's it? But I can't think
You
of it
gonna
right
let
now.
my arm fall
You
off?
gonna let
You
my
know?
arm
Yeah.
fall off? You know. Yes, in its own way, and that's part of the connection that I feel like some of them have. You know, Billie Holiday in particular obviously had an addiction,
Mm-hmm.
and this is controversial, but I feel like Billy Strayhorn, you know, had an addiction as well, and so we sort of just explore that through the music that they sang. You know, lush life, you know, lush, you know, to think of somebody that when you call somebody a lush,
Yeah.
you're sort of calling them
A drunk?
a drunk,
Yeah,
right?
a drunkard.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and Billy Strayhorn liked to drink, and you know, Billie Holiday, you know, did her own sort of abuse, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and so we do explore that just a little bit in the show. Mhm.
Wow.
Mhm.
So, did you work with others to take a look at what you were pulling together to get feedback and so forth? And
I did, and actually, I want to shout out to my partner, Gary Smith, who is not able to make this show, sadly, because he's very active in the church. But he came this past weekend and helped me and gave advice, and because we had a rehearsal over the weekend,
sure.
and he gave advice, and he helped me figure out, you know, some things that I needed to do. So it was wonderful. I'm so glad that he came, you know. So I definitely tried to, and I talked to my mother. You know, I talk to her all the time anyway. But I talked to her and asked her advice. You know, I asked other musicians, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah, so
Wow.
I definitely did that.
And the location that you chose, that had to play a part in you being able to execute what it is that you want to see happen, how you want people to feel, what you want them to experience.
I sang for almost a year at El Golfo Lounge. I think it was a year. At El Golfo Lounge in Silver Spring. Shout out to Ada. I don't know if she's listening, but she's probably working. But I sang there with a group called the Greater U Street Jazz Collective, and I really got used to that stage and got used to the audience. You know, the audience members, became friends with them. You know, and so. It was great. It was a wonderful experience, and I cannot wait to sing there again. It's been a while since I've sung there.
Yeah. So I mean, take us through your discography, if you will, just a little, helping us understand how you moved from studying at Howard to being able to pull together this kind of a platform, this tribute that, you know, it's big shoes. To stand in, to say that you're doing a tribute to Billie Holiday, Billy Strayhorn, and Bill Whithers.
Huge shoes.
Precisely. And so take us through that, your timeline, if you will.
Well, definitely. I would be remiss if I did not talk about my experience at Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville, which is right before I came to Howard. I went there only to study with really one teacher, and that was Reggie Thomas, who has since moved to Northern Illinois, and his wife, Mardra Thomas, who's an amazing jazz singer. He is a jazz pianist, and I studied with them, and so they really taught me how to analyze different artists, you know, to really, really sit down and gain their approach, you know, not just listening, just to copy and mimic, but to actually sort of gain their approach.
Well, what is that? What do you mean by analyze? What is that?
I'm so glad you asked that. Oh, you asked an amazing question.
What is that?
So one thing that we explored when we talked about Billie Holiday was the way that she sang songs. If you notice, Billie Holiday would figure out a way to sing the song. You can tell on one of her last albums that she did, Lady in Satin, they actually have the outtakes of you know, the ones that she didn't do. And she didn't know one of the songs that well. And so you can hear her sort of figuring out the way she was going to sing it.
Sure.
You know? Where, you know, jazz,
Wow.
they call it like, they say it's so free, but she actually figured out the way that she was going to sing it, and then she sang it that way pretty similarly, you know, each time, because that's the way that she sort of, you know, because I remember she went, so I walk, so I walk, so I walk. So you get to hear the way that she was trying to figure out how she wanted to sing it in the outtakes. And so that was one thing, you know, listening to the way that she accented different words. Also, one thing that she did was a sense of lyricism. You know, she gained, when I say that, I mean that she would sing a certain line, maybe she'd speed up a word and then she'd slow down just a word and then she'd catch back up, at
Yeah.
the end. She would do that because she wanted to accent specific words, so maybe I would talk and then I would, that sort of thing. I think that's fascinating. So I wanted to gain that approach. I'm not trying to imitate her because I can't sound like Billie Holiday, but I wanted to gain her approach, and I wanted to do that with the other musicians as well.
Wow. I mean, if you, and there's the noise barrier when you're listening to Billie Holiday music. You just can't get that crisp voice.
Yes,
very like
true.
we have today. So I can only, improvise, mentally on what she might sound like if I'm listening to her as an MP4,
right,
or an MP3
right.
or whatever. If you had to compare her today to an artist today, where would you say her range is? Because for me, Ella Fitzgerald has the best and most incredible range of any jazz, female vocalist I've ever heard. And I'm sure you've heard many more female vocalists in jazz than I have, so you might know someone else who has a better range than Ella. But for Billie, it's more it's more soft and gentle and just causes you to really think and just sit back, and she takes you somewhere else.
Oh my goodness! I mean, she truly she really tells a story, and that's the thing. And I feel like she lays her heart on the table when she sings, and that's what I'm so attracted to. In terms of modern day singers, and I try not to go that typical route, like nobody's singing that, you know what I mean? I feel like there are people that have really gained her approach. There's a singer, Cecile McLaurin Salvant, who is just amazing. If you hear her, you're just like, wow. And I think that she has that sort of approach that Billie Holiday has.
Wow. And so the same question goes for Billy Strayhorn. How do you get into character for him, or how did you tap into, not only the part of him that, maybe focused on, abuse, if you will, but the other parts of him, the other artist parts of him that created all the other wonderful success for him?
That's a really hard question. And the only thing that I will say is that when it comes to Billy Strayhorn, I'm probably the most connected to him, just because, I don't know, there's something about his music that really resonates. I'm sorry, I forgot the question. I realize I'm going kind of off the question.
So you learn how to tap into the actual way that Billie Holiday sung, the way that she sang. Same thing for
Billy Strayhorn. And he was a pianist. He was not a vocalist, but there was a sense. I don't know I don't even want to reduce it to melancholy or something like that. But there was a sense of longing in his music that I just resonate with, And I'm not trying to make me sound like I'm some kind of, like, oh, long for me, but it's something about it that I've always been attracted to.
And of course, Whithers.
Bill Whithers. Oh my goodness. I told you I've kind of gotten on the Bill Whithers train, later on, the past couple of years. But he creates music to me that is ridiculously honest. Like one of the phrases in his music is, "And when you cleared your throat, was that your cue? Dadgummit, who is he and what is he to you?" So in other words, like, because somebody's walking by and he thinks that, that his lover is being, is sort of like talking to them in code. And so he says, "And when you cleared your throat, was that your cue?"
Yeah.
That is a really specific thing to say.
It is very much so.
And I think that is really weird, and I love that. I love that. That is really weird.
Wow. I mean, you are a teacher.
Oh, really? Well, I do that all day. I work at Anacostia High School.
Yeah, I know you're a teacher, and I just remember you working with the youth and helping them to bring out, that I guess that confidence that they may not have on the surface regarding their voice, and trying to just just strengthen it.
Yeah, I tried. I really tried, and I still keep in contact with a lot of them. And I saw one of our students. She just had a baby, and I'm just like, girl, you're not old enough to have a baby. What do you do? Of course she is, but because it's been a while, and so it's just like, wow, these people are growing up and they're finding themselves, and it's wonderful to see them do that, and to see them. And like I said, I work over at Anacostia High School, and we just finished a Black History Month presentation, and there are a couple of singers. Well, they're just great singers, but one singer sang "Strange Fruit."
Yeah.
And I was like, "You're way too young to understand this, but why are you really, really understanding this?" Hang on, I'm sorry. I think that's mine.
It's all right.
Sorry. Wow, and there's I apologize, but yeah, that was one of she was fantastic. She just did a fantastic job.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's just great to see them really, really fall into themselves, and explore and gain the confidence so that they can go and do it, far, better than I could ever do it. They're amazing kids.
Are you just teaching music?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you following in the footsteps of that teacher that really?
I could never feel his footsteps. Oh my goodness. We're talking about Denise Adams or Reggie Thomas or Reggie Ray. I could never feel their footsteps. I can try to find my own way, but they were amazing. I try to glean knowledge from them and try to give that to the kids, but they're legendary. Legendary.
How do you feel about the arts and the lack of the arts that we have in the public school system right now? It's a great thing that you're able to do that.
Right.
But there are so many schools that don't have a U. or a painting teacher or an art teacher or.
And what kills me is it's usually the schools that need it the most, that they cut those programs, And I'm like, some of these kids that are dealing with a lot of stuff at home, they need a way to express themselves artistically, because it's a form of therapy. It's a form of healing, and it's so important.
Sure.
Why not? So, I think that it's really, really important. And this is a new administration, and I know that the things are going to be changed, and I don't know what the changes are going to be. As far as I know that they're talking about cutting the National Endowment for the Arts, which is insane.
Yeah, I'm just trying to wait and see what happens.
Yeah,
there's so much that's all around this entire era in which we live.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is that it's really hard to react to nothing. So,
You're right.
It's, I want to save some of my, energy.
Right. For when it actually.
For when something really does happen, because I can fall into that anxiety sort of mode or mindset, just thinking about what if, what if they do this or what if they do that, or, following some of the trends and discussions that, are creating fear. And not unjustly. I definitely think there is something to worry about and be concerned about. But I do think that we need to leave room for what's actually going to happen, and then have a plan in place for response, not just respond via our emotions and our anger, if you will. That's valid, and we definitely need to express that too, but that needs to be followed up with some real action items.
I agree. I definitely agree. And I will just keep it. We'll just say I'll be interested to see what that's going to look like.
I think the proof is going to be in the pudding. I think it's going to happen real soon. I think
and I think it's important to hold our representatives accountable.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And to fight for the issues that we know are prevalent in our society.
Yeah. I think I've been very vocal in talking about the Department of Education. And, I have 3 children, so it's kind of hard for me not to be concerned. Now, both of my daughters are, finished with public education, if you will, but my son is, high school. So I do care, what's happening. I am glad, though, that I don't have small children, because I would probably lose sleep wondering what their actual experience was going to be. be, especially if you don't have the ability to, be home and carve out the curriculum for
Right.
your children and teach it
Right.
to them. If you have to work, or, you have to be away from your children for extended periods of time each day, then you're kind of leaving their education in the hands of, someone else or some other, group of people who are making decisions, and those decisions, hopefully square with yours at the end of the day. So, I mean, there are
Yeah.
just so many reasons and ways that I can start to worry. And I'm really, like I said, just trying to wait and see. And then, just like I said, have that
Let's do what
real,
we gotta do.
action
Right.
items,
Right.
real
And
back
let's
pocket
go.
action items, and not just a lot of lip service and glad handing. Because
Right,
I
right.
think that's
And
been going
Facebook
on.
sharing, and I'm like,
Precisely.
let's
That's good.
do it.
That's
Right,
good.
that's wonderful.
It's good.
Right.
It's a
So
good
let's-
thing.
Right,
But,
right.
I mean, you got it. Some people are not going to get out there and do anything. But if they can share a post, great. If they can help increase the impressions for it, great. But there has got to be equally, if not more, that many people out there with their feet on the street,
Right.
going and making a
And
difference.
And attending, the ANC commission
Right.
meetings, those
Well,
sort of
actually,
things.
been knowing what ANC is and knowing who your ANC commissioner is,
Right,
right? So,
right,
and understanding the power that they have on that
Right.
local neighborhood
Yes.
level.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't trickle down; it trickles up. So what
Right.
is that? Yeah. What is that? I don't. You know what I mean? But that travels up.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand that as well. Yeah. You're
Precisely.
Right.
So back to our
Yeah. So we were really go. Yeah.
we were really on a tangent there, but a good one. So we're waiting and seeing what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But regarding your actual event that's coming up, are you thinking about what's next regarding another event?
That is very interesting.
Because I wonder how you're gonna and who you would pull together for the next one if you did that.
Yes. So I would definitely love to do Billy Bill in a different venue as well. To take it to different venues. That's number one. I would definitely love to do that. Also, I wrote a play about Billy Strayhorn, and I would really, really love to see that performed, this year over the summer, something like that.
Wow.
And we've done a couple of readings of it, and so I love my actors. A lot of them most of them, like 90% of them, were Howard alum. So it's important to keep that alive and to spread the message about Billy Strayhorn and who he was. So not a lot of people know who he is. They know who Duke Ellington is, but
Sure.
they don't know who Billy Strayhorn is. And that's important to me
Right.
to know who he is, because he had a great tribute, or he had a great accomplishment, not only to Duke Ellington, but he was just a prolific composer himself.
Right.
know.
When you are thinking about how you are going to potentially put together a next set of artists, notice that I'm guiding you toward doing another one of these, because I think that they're so cool, and I think it's niche.
Yeah,
I think it's niche.
yeah.
I don't think I don't see anybody doing that particular thing.
Oh, that makes me feel
And
good.
having the background that you have to actually, put some credence behind it.
Right,
It's not just for entertainment's sake, but you love the arts. You have, and you're in the arts.
Yeah.
So as you're thinking
Yes.
about your next group of people or one person to tribute, how are you making sure that you are also staying true to yourself as an artist?
That is a really interesting question. And I'm going to go with Spirit here because I just believe it. And it's so interesting because his room was literally down the street from here. Reggie Ray, who was a costume designer over at Howard University, he sat me down once. And I'm not going to get emotional, but, he said something that was so true. He asked me, what do you want to do? And I was like, what are you talking about? I want to act. I want to sing. That's what I told him at the time. And he's like, no, I mean, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. He said, your vision. What is your vision? And I couldn't say anything to him. I didn't know what he was talking about. I'm like, vision. And what he was talking about is your personal vision. And so I had to understand what that meant. Mm-hmm. And then once I figured out what that meant, then I had to live up to that vision. And I don't feel like I live up to it as well as I could be. I definitely feel like there's so many different things that I could be doing to sharpen that vision and to really bring that vision forward. But what my vision is is to change the perception of black, same, gender-loving men, and I really do mean that. So that's why I worked on writing the play about Billy Strayhorn, because he was a black, same, gender-loving male, and it was important to talk about his story, and to let other people know that he was a homosexual, and it's important. And not only was that, but he was way more than that. He and not that that's small, but he did so many different things. But it's important to know these icons so that people can look up to them.
Sure. I mean, he wasn't the first in the arts industry.
Oh my goodness! Come on
and he just wasn't the first. There are so many that kind of put their stamp on that, and were not afraid to express who they were, regardless of who had something to say about it, or regardless of who was against that particular thing. I know for sure that artists are really, really hard on themselves.
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
How is that? Is that a part of your makeup? And if it is, how do you get past that? Because I'm wondering that in relation to the event that you're doing, and whether or not you'll be really, really satisfied with what you create, and how you'll be able to celebrate that.
I will be real, and I'm just being real. I have not done a show singing wise. I've done written things, but I haven't done a show with all singing for over 2 years. And I do, and the reason why I think is a lot because of self-doubt. And I say that, and it's hard for me to say because it's like, I'm saying this on, on live radio, I'm saying, but it's true. And I think a lot of that has to deal with self-doubt, and not believing in myself. And you get into this sort of self-talk where you're not good enough, you can't do that. Why are you doing that? Why
where does that come from?
Oh my goodness! For me, I think it comes from a lot of things. My parents were always supportive, so it was never that. But I grew up, as an overweight child. You know how that is, growing up, And so kids are mean, and they will say mean things to you, and then you begin to believe it about yourself, and that's where you get into a lot of trouble.
Got it.
You do. And so then I just started to kind of think of myself as less than, and a lot, and that has really wreaked havoc in my life.
Yeah.
It has. And so it's important to understand that, but to move on, and to really try to be a beacon of hope for other people that might be dealing with the same thing. That's why I love Billy, and Bill, because to me, they were underdogs in certain ways, and I feel the same way. I'm not going to put myself in the same category as them.
Why not?
But I mean, I understand.
Well, why not?
Because I feel like that's a legacy that I have to live up to.
Right.
And they,
But they were artists just like you, and you were part of that club, right?
You're right.
And I think they would look at you as their peer. I know that I've seen some artists who are definitely, on the levels thing. Oh, yeah. But to me, it looks like from the outside looking in, that lots of artists are pretty humble in bringing others into the fold and, helping them to feel like they are part of it. I mean, you all are artists in your own way, and you have different ways of expressing, your creativity and your genius.
Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, I'm not trying to suck up. I'm not a big suck up person. Like, that's not my thing, But you off and on in my life, throughout my life, since we've known each other, you've been very supportive, and you've always been that. We sat down and we've had conversations, and you've just been extremely supportive, and I will always remember those conversations that we've had, and any more, even to come, because I believe that you've always been supportive, and I've never felt like it was malicious or anything, I never felt that energy from you at all. You've always been extremely supportive, and that's helpful. It's extremely helpful.
Well, since we're talking and giving, that kind of feedback, let me just tell you that you are an amazing person who knows how to express yourself and help other people get excited about it. When I see you in character, it's like you disappear and you go behind, the curtain of whoever it is that you are helping people, envelop. And that is something that I'll never forget. I love the way that you work with youth to help them bring out a part of them that they may not have known existed inside them. That's a gift that you have.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's a gift. And it's not just about your voice. It's about, your ability to just, behold that thing that you have and share it without reservation.
Right. That's so true. I was thinking of something when you said that, I don't give my students credit enough because I'm always hard on them. I'm like, I want you to be, I want you to do this, I want you to do, that sort of thing. But they have given me a sense of strength as well. What I mean? That they've awakened that because they will say, Mr. Moton, what you doing?
Yeah.
And they'll be real.
Wow.
And they'll say, Mr. Moton, what you doing? Meaning, like, what are you doing with your artistic, and for kids to be that sort of prolific and to really call you on your stuff,
Sure.
you gotta step up. And so that's part of the reason why I started to think about what I want to do. Like, I would love to do this Billy Bill thing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see what this will do, because even the kids, will bring it to you.
How are you finding time to to focus on that? And stay, because I'm assuming that you've got them working at school. You've got your kids at school working on something really great.
Oh yeah, we're working on Sparkle right now, the musical they're doing. So that is taking up a lot of time. And just school, just in general,
Sure.
Takes up a lot of time. And so one of my friends, who I don't know if she's listening, but her name is Shamia. She said to me once, she said, you need to make a day about yourself. You need to make she called it a musical Monday is what she said.
Wow.
And so that's what I do. I make sure and I set a specific day, that I set for myself. I do practice every day. I make sure and do that. But there's a day that I don't tell anyone, because then people want to, they want to use that day. But there's a day that I keep to myself. I go to work, but afterwards, I don't do anything after, and I focus on what I want to focus.
Yeah,
on.
that was my next question for you, and it had to do with how do you keep yourself current, and just not working with your students or just being in form when you're practicing and so forth, or you're rehearsing and so forth. But how do you take the time to learn new things and sharpen your technique and do all of the things that are going to keep you in the front of your genre?
I would tell you, as a teacher, you sort of get it where you can sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, of course, I do take that time for myself, but I try to do a lot more listening as well. I usually catch the bus or I will walk, because I don't live that far from my job.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll either walk or I'll catch the bus. And while I do that, I listen to music, and I listen to new music so that I can understand, okay, this is what I should be doing. Not what I should be doing, but this is what inspires me. This is what, So you try to find different pockets to get that in, because
What's in your iTunes list?
Oh my goodness. There's an artist that I'm really, really into right now. His name is I can't think of his name right now. Rufus Wainwright is his name, and he's like a Canadian artist. He's a white guy, but there's no shade to to anybody. But I really love his music. He's a songwriter, what I mean, and he's amazing, and I love to listen to his music. So I listen to a lot of his. I listen to a lot of Diane Reeves. That's my girl.
Yeah.
And probably one of my favorite singers is definitely Patty Austin.
Yeah.
I love Patty Austin.
She's such a classic.
Classic.
She is a classic.
And she is still making great
Her
great
music never dies. Yeah. It never
my goodness.
That's what it means when you're a classic. Your music never dies. It just it just stays alive regardless of the era, regardless of the generation. Everybody can find something about it that they like.
Yes, I completely agree. And this is really nerdy, and I'm not even trying to do like a shameless plug, but the group at Howard University, Afro Blue.
Yeah.
They're amazing, and I listen to their music a lot. I do.
What do you mean you don't want to plug the Bisons?
Right. Well, you know what I mean? Like they're sitting right, or they're right next to us. You know what I mean? So I don't want to sound like, oh, I'm trying to plug in the, but it's true. I really love Professor Kenitra Miller, what she has done with that entire, and so I listen a lot to that.
Great. Tell us about the show and where it's going to be and what time and how people can get tickets and so forth.
So the show is Billie Bill. It is in Silver Spring, Maryland. It's at El Golfo Lounge, which is 8739 Flower Avenue in Silver Spring. It is from 6 to 8. The tickets are $10.
That's great.
Yes.
That's a nice price, $10.
$10. It's on a Sunday, by the way. and or this Sunday, and you just pay at the door.
Sure. Oh,
Just
that's great.
Yep,
That's
just come in,
great.
pay at the door. Come, you get a free margarita out of it too. Isn't that
That's
great?
very nice. That's
Yes,
wonderful.
Yeah,
That's
so
great. Well,
it's a great deal.
I wish you so much success with the event.
Oh, thank you so
I'm
much.
going to put the event on our website. It'll be on
Oh,
akiagarnett.com.
that makes that
Go to the
wonderful.
website and make sure you go out and you support Barry. Barry is going to take us away this evening. He's going to sing for us.
Yes, definitely.
Stay right there. We'll be right back.
And this is gonna be take up like this is gonna like cut up here, right? Okay. Okay. So I gotta get something together. Is it still on? Are we on right now? Okay.
Yeah, it's just kind of dark over here. It's kind of nighttime, so I can actually use these a little bit. I don't think that strobe light actually even works anymore. But this should do the trick. Just like that. Just give me a mic check real quick.
Check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. Okay.
I'll bring the music in and I'll bring it in right after.
Okay. Say Shabba-doo bay doo bay doo bay, sabba-doo ba doo ba doo, sabba-doo ba doo doo bay, see doo 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 ba doo ba doo, see doo doo doo, see doo 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 boo boo boo. You must take the A train to go to Sugar Hill way up in Harlem. Miss the A train, you'll find you'll miss the quickest way to Harlem. Hurry, coming, listen to those rails a-thrumming. All aboard, get on the A train. Soon you will be on Sugar Hill in Harlem. Lord, Lord, Louis, Shadooboo Billiada, Shaboo Bida Bo, Boobity Doobo Biddy Bia, Sabobi, Buddha Bit, Sadiddy Bee, Babadooey, Babo, Boobadoo Bia, Boobadooey, Badlobe Oodley, Salobel Data, Sibadoo Bidoo, Libadoo Bay, Sibadoo Bedoo, Libadoo Do. I see ba do ba do dee doo doo dee, so ba do ba do 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 be, ba do do be da bloody day, say do do dee do da, see do ba do ba do dee ba do dee do.
go to Sugar Hill way up in Harlem. If you miss the A train, you find them is the quickest way to Harlem. You hurry, get on now, it's coming, it's a coming. Listen to those rails a thrumming. All aboard, get on the A train. You find you missed the quickest way to Harlem. Thank you so much. This is so much fun. Yes, it is at El Golfo Lounge in Silver Spring, Maryland, 8739 Flower Avenue, Sunday, March 12th from 6 to 8. Cover is $10, and you get a free margarita at the event. So, yeah, please come.
Go on out, support Barry. Thank you so much for tuning in to
Yes.
this week's edition of Think Big. I'm your host, Akia Garnett. You can find out more about the show at akiagarnett.com. Thank you again. See you next time.